Back in the 1930s, when the Great Depression hit like a dust storm through every front door, folks didn't head to the store when they got hungry. They stepped outside into their own backyards. Money was tight, jobs were gone, and store shelves empty or too expensive for most. But our grandparents, they were tough. They grew their own medicine, their own sweets, their own survival, right out of the soil. You see, these weren't fancy fruits shipped in from some far-off place. These were homegrown heroes, rich in nutrients, easy to grow, and built to last. We're talking real superfoods, before the word even existed. In this video, we're digging up 10 of the cheapest, most powerful fruits that helped families survive the hardest years in American history. You've probably never heard of some of them, but your grandparents sure did. 1. Mulberry, the fruit factory tree. When times were lean, the mulberry tree was a blessing in disguise. You didn't need money, fertilizer, or even much attention. Just one good tree, and it would feed the whole family. Every summer, its branches drooped low with sweet, deep purple berries. Kids would run out in the morning, barefoot and grinning, with bowls or just their hands, filling them up before breakfast. And if they didn't eat them fresh, Mama turned them into pies, jams, and syrups that lasted through the coldest winters. The tree didn't just feed people either. Chickens, pigs, and even the silkworms loved it too. That's right. Some families raised silkworms on the mulberry leaves to trade for cloth. Talk about a multi-purpose tree. Best part? It kept producing for weeks. Not all at once like some fruits, but little by little, giving steady harvests just when families needed them most. 2. Medlar, the rotten fruit that saved winters. Now here's a fruit with a funny name and a stranger habit. The medlar. Folks used to call it open arse. Don't laugh, that's what it looked like. But when the snow came down and the pantry was near empty, a medlar could feel like gold. You couldn't eat it off the tree. Nope. You had to pick it after the first frost, then let it sit and blet, which meant letting it soften until it looked downright spoiled. But that was the magic. Once ripe, the flesh turned into a sweet, spiced custard. Tasted like apple butter mixed with dates and red wine. People would line boxes with straw and store the medlars in the cellar. And come deep winter, when no other fruit was left and fresh flavor was just a memory, medlars were the treat that brought warmth back into the kitchen. Even Shakespeare wrote about them. And if he were around today, he'd probably say, forget your $12 avocado toast, pass the medlar jam. 3. Pawpaw, the American banana. If you've never heard of the pawpaw, you're not alone. But back in the day, this was America's best-kept fruit secret. Growing wild in forests and shady backyard corners, the pawpaw looked like a mango and tasted like banana custard. Smooth, rich, and sweet. Folks called it the poor man's banana, but there was nothing poor about the flavor. It needed no care, no pruning, and barely any water. Just a little shade and time. Grandparents used to mash it into puddings, churn it into ice cream, or eat it fresh with a spoon, straight from the skin. What made pawpaws special? They ripened just when other fruits were giving up, late summer to early fall. And they were packed with vitamins, energy, and fiber. For many rural families, a pawpaw tree meant they had dessert, even when they couldn't afford sugar. 4. Gooseberry, the tangy treasure. Gooseberries weren't flashy, but they sure pulled their weight. These little green gems packed a punch. Tart, zippy, and full of vitamin C. Grandma used to say one bite could wake you up better than a cup of coffee. They were a kitchen favorite, especially for jams, pies, and meat sauces. That sharp tang balanced out rich stews and roasted meats, making them a prized addition to Depression-era meals when every ingredient had to count. But here's the kicker. For a while, gooseberries were banned in many places because folks believed they spread a disease that hurt pine trees. So they disappeared. Quietly, but not from memory. Nowadays they're making a comeback, and rightfully so. Hardy, cold-tolerant, and able to grow in the scrappiest corners of the garden, gooseberries remind us that even the most humble fruits can be full of power and purpose. 5. Currant, the cold weather candy. If you grew up in a northern state, chances are your grandparents had a row of currant bushes tucked along a fence line. Red, black, or white, these berries were like nature's candy with a sharp little bite. But they weren't just for snacking. Currants were survival food. High in vitamin C, they kept families healthy through long, dark winters when citrus was just a dream. Mothers turned them into syrups, cordials, and jams that brightened up even the dullest porridge. During the Great Depression, when medical care was hard to come by, those little berries were medicine in disguise. Sadly, currants too fell victim to old bans and fell out of fashion. But ask any old-timer who remembers them, and their eyes will light up. Tart, bold, and beautiful, currants deserve a spot back in every American garden. 6. Crabapple, the tough little apple that did it all. Crabapples weren't made for biting into, unless you liked a mouthful of sour surprise. But don't be fooled. These rugged little apples were the unsung heroes of backyard orchards. They were perfect for jellies and preserves because they were loaded with pectin. Grandma never needed store-bought jelly mix. She just tossed in a few crabapples, and the batch set every time. People used the juice for cider and vinegar, too, both essential when money was tight and store shelves were bare. The wood, strong and beautiful, ideal for tool handles, toys, and kindling. And here's what really made crabapples special. They thrived in neglect. Poor soil, cold winters, dry summers, didn't matter. The tree kept producing year after year. Crabapples didn't just feed families, they taught us how to do more with less. And isn't that the real meaning of frugal living? 7. Quints, the fragrant fruit of hard times. Quints might have looked like a lumpy yellow apple, but oh, what a fragrance. Just one ripe fruit sitting on the windowsill could perfume the whole kitchen. It was nature's potpourri and pantry staple rolled into one. You couldn't really eat it raw, too tough, too sour. But once it was cooked down, quints turned into golden velvet. Grandma used it in jams, jellies, and stews, where its floral apple-pear flavor added warmth to even the humblest dish. It was rich in pectin too, meaning it helped stretch sugar further, which was a blessing when sweeteners were expensive or rationed. Hardy, drought-resistant, and long-living, the quince tree was a silent worker in many old farmyards. If you're lucky enough to find one today, pick a fruit, give it a sniff, and you'll understand why this humble beauty was treasured through the toughest times. 8. Juneberry, serviceberry, the first fruit of spring. Before strawberries, before cherries, came the Juneberry. These little purple fruits were often the very first taste of sweetness after a long, hungry winter. For families living off the land, that meant everything. They looked like blueberries, but had a richer flavor, with hints of almond and raisin. Sweet, soft, and bursting with juice, Juneberries went in pies, jams, and cobblers, or got eaten straight off the bush by kids with purple fingers and grins to match. Even better, the trees were beautiful, covered in white blossoms in early spring, then loaded with berries, and finally showing fiery leaves in fall. They were the kind of plant that fed the body and the soul. Tough, reliable, and perfect for small spaces, Juneberries were a true gift to Depression-era gardens, and they deserve a comeback in yours. 9. Elderberry, the backyard pharmacy. When medicine was too expensive and doctors too far, folks turned to the elderberry bush, and with good reason. These tiny, deep purple berries were powerful, packed with antioxidants, and used for centuries as nature's immune booster. Granny would cook the berries down into syrup to help with coughs and colds. A spoonful a day kept winter bugs at bay. At least, that's what she swore by. The flowers were steeped into fever-fighting teas, and come fall, the dark berries found their way into wine, jelly, and even pie. Elderberries grew wild along fence lines and creek beds, and smart families always transplanted a few close to the house. They were tough, fast-growing, and came back year after year with hardly any help. Beautiful, functional, and medicinal, the elderberry wasn't just a fruit, it was a home remedy, a harvest, and a little bit of hope in uncertain times. 10. Mayha, the southern jewel in jelly jars. In the swampy woods of the American South, there lived a secret most folks up north never heard of: the Mayha. These little red fruits were tart, tough, and absolutely beloved by Southern families, especially when it came to homemade jelly. Come springtime, whole families would head out before sunrise, buckets in hand, to gather mayhaws from flooded lowlands. It was muddy, buggy work, but oh, the reward. The ruby-red jelly that came from those fruits was the pride of many a kitchen shelf. Sweet with a hint of citrus bite, Mayha jelly was more than just a spread. It was a tradition, often passed from grandmother to granddaughter. It found its way onto warm biscuits, holiday tables, and into Christmas gift baskets when money was tight. In tough times, Mayha trees gave Southern folks a taste of joy and a reminder that even the swamp can bloom with flavor. Back in the Great Depression, survival didn't come in a box or a bottle. It came from the backyard, from dirt-stained hands and homegrown hope. These 12 fruits weren't just cheap calories, they were powerful, practical, and full of life. They healed, they nourished, and they reminded folks that even in the hardest times, the earth still gives. Our grandparents didn't need superfood labels. They just knew what worked, season after season, storm after storm, and maybe it's time we remembered that too. If you've got a little patch of land, even just a pot on a porch, consider growing one of these forgotten treasures. It's more than food, it's legacy. Which of these fruits brought back memories for you? Or maybe you're inspired to try planting one. Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story. And if you enjoyed this stroll through the past, be sure to like, subscribe, and join us next time as we rediscover more forgotten wisdom from the folks who knew how to live well with very little. Until then, may your roots run deep, your harvests be sweet, and your heart always stay close to home.